Hey Norman, hi Len, how are you?
Good,
Good.
man. Good.
Question for both of you guys. How much of a fan, how much of knowledge did you go knowing about the John Wick franchise going into this?
Knew it 100%. Have been a fan. I actually was introduced to the whole John Wick from the beginning. Chad and I have crossed paths and kind of worked together here and there. And I remember talking to him when he and Dave were developing John Wick. At the time, it was called Scorn. And so from very early on, I've been kind of tracking and knew like because he's one of the most talented choreographers around, and I remember just thinking like, what's this John Wick going to turn into? It's going to be something. It's going to be something very very cool. So I've known it's been in. I've been a fan of it for a long time. Yeah. So, but that's where I first kind of got a sense of it.
Nice. There's so many cool sequences. Norman, in particular, some of your sequences are really awesome. Talk about that choreography of it all, and I'm sure you've done many action projects at this point, but talk a little bit about that choreography going into it because it was super detailed, super cool.
Yeah, I mean, you feel very safe with that stunt team, right off the bat. But it's there's a lot of moving parts all the time. It's a much different fighting style than what I usually do, which is a very sloppy fighting style. There's multiple fights happening at the same time. There's lots of things exploding around you. There's a lot of timing issues that you have to hit. You have to hit this because that reacts, and this flies by your face, and this explodes on the wall. So there's a lot of math going on.
Is it harder shooting action in shoes that don't fit?
It's true. Yeah, I had it. Part of them I had a shoe. I had a pair of shoes that were like two
Were they
sizes
too
too
small?
small,
Yeah.
and it was raining, and there was a lot of steps involved, and it was
You probably would have
freezing.
preferred to stay barefoot.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely could have got my footing better than tip 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 tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one scene I'm completely barefoot with a lot of sharp things exploding around me. It's just different. It's you just kind of have to like keep your chin down and go at it. You know what I mean? And then you have to memorize it in a way that you have. It's kind of like a long speech. If you memorize a lot of words, then you can do the scene without thinking about the words. So you have to memorize all the bits and pieces so that you can just do it and not think about it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're gonna you're gonna you're gonna get a gun to the face, which has happened to me, and I've had the stitches. I've been beat up enough to know how to pay attention. I think you know what I mean.
I think so.
Yeah.
You both have a love, I think, for a female heroine. Talk about that a little bit and what attracted you to this project.
What in terms of I mean, what attracted me to the project is being connected to that world and such, but also an opportunity to create a character that is very different than John Wick. I talk a lot about like what I wanted to do with this movie, but also there's what I didn't want the movie to be. I had no intention of doing a female John Wick. John Wick is John Wick, and it is a brand new character and an opportunity to create a character that is kick-ass and badass in her own right, but very, very different story and energy than John Wick. And then when I met with Anna and kind of gave I guess the vision of what kind of sketch in my mind of what kind of woman this was. She then built onto that, and we had a lovely conversation. And also really on the female aspect of it, of really wanting to play, even though it's a heightened world, to make the stakes in the fight realistic, and that if she's going up against an opponent that is twice the size of her, let's play into that. Let's deal with it. And that became part of the language of how she fights and is all the essence of fight like a girl and do what you have to do to win. Um, and so that became a lot of the shape of how we found the character.
Well, congratulations. You both made a kick-ass movie. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Thank you so
Right on.
much.
Cool.
Perfect. Hi, congrats.
Hello, OJ. Thank you.
Yes, this is a big IP, big film project. Were the nerves super high going into this once you got the call to do this movie?
Mostly just about training. That was the biggest nerve. I wanted to get into training as fast as possible. So that was the thing that I was pestering my team about to sort of get those things figured out, the logistics, because I wanted to make sure that I did a good job. I'm
Mm.
a fan of the franchise. Big, big fan.
Well, you're no stranger to the I feel like to the genre of combat and all that. So how is that different from the other roles you've done?
In terms of combat,
Yeah, in terms of the training aspect of it, because I feel like you've done a lot of training before. I've seen you do knives and everything before. So how is the training different for this one?
a lot of it was about how can you show that you're getting hurt on camera without actually getting hurt. So, learning how to fall was a big one that we trained for 4 weeks, and how to sort of throw yourself against walls and those aspects where you can sell not so much a hit when someone hits you, but of like when you make contact with something that it's outside of a human body, where it looks painful and also it is safe. So those were things that, as I remember back watching the John Wick films and watching Keanu fight, it was a lot of him looking so hurt, and that's why you care for this man, because you're like, oh, this man's going to war. And especially as an actor, you're watching, it's like, he's going to war for my own entertainment. You're like, yes.
Right.
So those little aspects were a little bit different, that I think made me see stunt in a whole different way.
Okay. Stunt Oscar, here we come. How does your Latinidad, your Latinist factor into your roles? How do you play that into your roles when you pick them? Like, how does that work into your decision making?
Well, I think, in terms of how that comes into fruition, it it might be centered, it could have shades of Latinidad. It also is shades of upbringing in general, you know. The way I can connect to characters depending on if I remember if this character speaks to someone a certain way that I, in my own childhood, remember speaking to someone that parallels this dynamic. And so it could be based on my own upbringing in Mexico, which transfers into my heritage and my own way of being Mexican American. And also, there are elements that are completely removed from Mexican American, and it feels more of a universal aspect of like a child speaking to a parent and a parent speaking to a child, and someone who is just trying to become a better person in all aspects. So, for example, like Javier, I there is, I'm sure, elements of Latinidad because I can't help but to not remove that from me. That is always going to be a part of me. And so, knowing, for example, my parents doing the best that they could to give me a better life was already a quick hook to me, myself, with Eve, young Eve, about risks that this man takes or that I would take in order for this person to have a different life than I did. So there are elements that it does incorporate it. But I also think it's just one aspect that I usually bring into roles.
No, of course. I mean, and the story's so universal. I mean, I feel like this you playing her dad was it made a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
Um it's just that dynamic. Were you able to talk to Anna at all about like her on the other end, or was it just you filming that part singular?
I think there was some elements about like what were the aspects, and it was mostly a conversation with Len, the director, about how is she reminded of the father in aspects, whether it's mannerisms, whether it's tonally moments or like imagery or something, right? Because it always comes around somehow, right? And so I, at a certain point, I trust that Len and Anna had their own way of where the character was going to go. That also made sense. That was going to honor why she's doing everything, which is obviously the death of her father. But yeah, I had some ideas. But listen, when you're an actor and you're coming in to do a role, the biggest thing that I want to do is I want to throw as many ideas as possible. And even if they reject all of them, sometimes one of them sticks, you know?
Why not? Or it doesn't hurt to try.
Yes, sometimes one of them sticks. But at the end of the day, it's like this is a director's medium. And the most important thing is like if I trust my director that they know what they're doing, I have a blast, you know? And that's what I did. I had a blast shooting this whole thing.
Well, I had a blast watching it. Congratulations.